Rory, pre-season predictions. I know it's a bit of a sore subject for you, really, isn't it? And any reason why? Any reason why it's a bit of a sore subject?
No, I mean, I think one of my predictions has been proved to be possibly the worst prediction that anyone has ever suggested. I think I've seen, like, Alan Hansen used to hold this title, didn't he? Alan Hansen saying that you don't win anything with kids.
Yeah. Have you taken it? You've taken some titles then this season?
Because on some level, when he said you don't win anything with kids, he was correct. He was correct. Of course, that team went on to win the treble. That was a few years later. The team that they said that he said you don't win anything with kids, and although the kids won that league, they also won it because of players like Bruce and Cantona, who weren't kids. Whereas my prediction, there is no redeeming quality to it whatsoever. It's just factually incorrect. And the worst thing about it all, it was basically over. It was a season-long prediction that pretty much ended in September.
Yeah, let's just remind people what you said. You went viral earlier this season. One of your predictions was that Erling Haaland just wouldn't cut it in the Premier League, wouldn't fit into Manchester City's system. And you're right. I mean, that's the thing. It was only by September he was scoring hat-trick after hat-trick. And already that clip must have been haunting. I mean, you must have been having nightmares about it. What was it like, though, to be at the centre of that kind of internet storm? Let's be fair, you know, a few people laughing at you there because of what you said. What was that actually like for you?
I didn't anticipate it blowing up the way that it did. I don't think anybody did. You know, when you say something like that, you don't anticipate it becoming one of the most clicked videos on a particular platform. You know, I didn't anticipate that happening, but ultimately I made my statement. I made my feelings known. I felt like there was logic in it. Like, just to give you my rationale, it was because previously we'd seen players land from the Bundesliga with big reputations and not necessarily take to the Premier League like a duck's water. So, for example, we had Timo Werner land at Chelsea and be one of the worst players I've ever had the misfortune of seeing. We've seen Kai Havertz land from the Bundesliga, came with a big reputation. People were actually talking about him as being a potential Ballon d'Or winner. And again, Chelsea need to offload him. Bearing in mind how bad Chelsea are at the moment, I'm still saying we need to get rid of Kai Havertz. That's how poor he's been. Jadon Sancho would be another example. So the logic, the foundation for where I was coming from was that having a good track record in the Bundesliga doesn't necessarily guarantee you scoring goals in the Premier League.
Can I just ask one question? What moment was it for you? What goal from Haaland did you think, oh no?
I think it was day one. I think it was West Ham. Do you know when he scored against West Ham, sort of bullied them and then ran through and struck a yoga pose? You know, he found the lotus or whatever it's called. I think that was a moment where I realised that there was something very, very cutthroat, very sinister and very clinical about Erling Haaland. And any misgivings that I may have had, they were immediately looking flawed. Don't even think the people that thought he was going to do well, though, anticipated this. Nobody predicted that he would come in and break all sorts of records. You know, I thought that Mohamed Salah's record in the Premier League was impressive, not even thinking about what Andy Cole and Alan Shearer did. So for him to go and break all of them, it did surprise me. But that's the kind of guy he is. He is outrageously good, and he is actually the definition of a goal scoring machine, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's a goal scoring machine as a team as well. He plays for Manchester City. They're going to create chance after chance. How many goals do you think you'd have scored in that team this year?
Well, do you know what? There is another suggestion here. There is another conversation that I had with a dear friend on this very show, Adi Oladipo. We were talking once, and rather flippantly, we were talking about players that would score 30 goals for Man City. And this is why people said that I didn't necessarily mean it, because on that show, we were just kind of having a conversation. Who would score 30? And by the end of it, it had become a bit of a joke. You know, we were saying Marian Pahars would have scored 30 for this team. Noel Whelan would have scored 30 for this team. Dion Dublin would have scored 30 for this team. Julian Jochin would have scored 30 for this team. And I also think that on some level there is a truth in that. You know, I think Harry Kane would have scored a similar amount to Haaland. But don't know if there's ever been a player just so perfect for goal scoring. Like, if you think about his build, the way that he moves, his burst of pace, the way that he can conduct himself, the strength, everything about him is designed to find the back of the net. And although some other strikers may be more gifted, and there was a time when I actually made the case, but I think a lot of people did, there was a suggestion that maybe Julian Alvarez was a better player for the Pep Guardiola system in order to allow them to press from the front, in order to allow them to create the space for the midfielders. Maybe Julian Alvarez was a better option. But in terms of just just functionally getting the ball into the back of the net. I don't think we've ever seen anything like it.
As we said, Erling Haaland, ridiculous. You know, record breaker, fantastic, amazing season. But Jesus, firstly, was injured for a lot of the season, but also was, you know, very important player for Arsenal in their title challenge.
Yeah, he was huge for Arsenal. He was a very good signing. I think it was an astute signing from Mikel Arteta. Bringing in players like Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko. Of course, what you're bringing in is excellent footballers in their positions. But also what you're bringing in is know-how, experience, nous, what it takes to win. And I think the reason that Arsenal managed to actually have a sustained and serious title bid is because of players like that. I know he was injured, and you've got to give Mikel Arteta and players like Eddie Nketiah a lot of credit because they managed to roll with the punches. But for Arteta to play the system that he wants, and we know what he wants to do. He doesn't want. Look, he wants Erling Haaland because everybody in their right mind wants Erling Haaland, but he doesn't want that for the system. What he wants a multitude of players, so say 4 players, or maybe even more, maybe even half a dozen players, to score approximately 10 goals. So he wants to attack with a front 4 that's really effervescent, presses from the front, full of life, and full of goals shared across the board. So I think that when Gabriel Jesus was signed by Arsenal, people said he's never going to be the 30-goal-a-season man. I don't think he has to be. In order to be a success, I don't think he has to be. And although Arsenal managed to survive without him and cope quite well without him, I think that there is a case to be made that if that injury that happened against Cameroon, I think, in the World Cup, and that ruled him out for 3 months, I think if that didn't happen, although they managed to win a lot of games without him, I still think that they would have been in a stronger position and more likely to have succeeded and maybe won a trophy, maybe won an FA Cup if he wasn't out. Because remember, they did quite well in the Europa League. Ultimately, they fell out of it. But part of the reason they fell out of it is because they didn't have the squad. And part of the reason they didn't have the squad is because of injuries to players like Jesus.
Jesus, as you say, no, he doesn't need to be that prolific. But, I mean, Eddie Nketiah did do well when he came in for him. But do you feel that in the summer, Arsenal do need to sign that player that maybe they can bring off the bench? Maybe that can start ahead of Jesus when they do need someone that can just bag goals, can get it into the back of the net.
So. I think the one thing that Arsenal potentially lack, as much as they need strength in depth, they obviously need replenishments and they need to improve, just totally elevate the ability in the squad. So they need to be looking at players, you know, if like Reece Nelson shouldn't be getting minutes when Saka's out. If you look at who comes in at the back, you know, Rob Holding's obviously not good enough to deputise for somebody like Saliba. I also think what they need is a plan B. So somebody who can maybe go long. You know, of Vlahovic kind of character who they looked at before. Just somebody to give Mikel Arteta the opportunity to go for a plan B.